understanding that as a coach, it's not about you. It's about them, the players. They're the ones that go out and play.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the journey of a grassroots rugby coach. More tracksuits, less business suits. And this is the YouTube episode of the recent podcast. So in the podcast, I spoke with Andrew Bath. He coaches both junior cricket and junior rugby here in Melbourne. He coaches the under-16 team at Brighton Grammar. He also coaches at Racing, and he also helps out at the Moorabbin Rugby Clun. He's coached kids from under-10s all the way to under-18s across both boys and girls in both sports. We talked about coaching kids and how cricket and rugby relate to each other with regards to training and some insightful stuff around that type of thing. So glad you're watching. Hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something out of it. I think we're right to go, mate. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we are right to go. So how are you tonight, Andrew?
Yeah, very well. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Good. Glad to be back out of lockdown and rugby's back on for us.
Yeah. No, it was back on for the kids on the weekend as well, which was good.
Yeah, it was really good. So just as we start, mate, just for the listeners, can you just give us the 30-second version of who you are, where you're at, who you coach, all that type of stuff?
Yeah. So Andrew Bath, I coach across a couple of different areas. So I coach at Racing Rugby Club and help out up at Moorabbin. So that can be across different teams. So under 14s, under 16s, under 18s. And then I also coach at Brighton Grammar with their under 16s. So I've been coaching rugby for about 5-6 years. And yeah, from a coaching perspective, I've coached cricket pretty much all my life, but stopped playing rugby when I was younger and then got into coaching my boys and sort of have gone from there. Nice. All right. So for me, you're a local. Yep. Yeah, I'm a local, born in New Zealand though. So I live in Melbourne, but born in New Zealand. Yeah. Like half of Melbourne. Yep.
Yeah. So just to start off with, mate, how did you get into coaching?
Like I said, I've coached cricket and coached other things pretty much all my life, and my work revolves a lot around coaching. But in terms of rugby, I took my two boys, I think it was just my youngest, down to a tri-rugby session that Racing Rugby Club were running up at Dendy Park, and was standing there and gave a couple of instructions, and then before I knew it, I was coaching the under 10s that season. And I say before I knew it, look, I'm not a great stand there and watch person. I want to generally try and be involved in doing something. I know that community sports clubs rely on the volunteers, and if I've got kids playing, then I think it's the onus is on me to actually help create that environment that the kids are there and can have a good time.
Yeah, and I think you're probably in the majority when it's like I took up coaching because my kid was playing and I was either the last one at the bar or the slowest one to take the step back, or I just stood there as they threw the balls at me. Or so I've seen plenty of those coaches during my time. But we do it because we love it. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and look, it's interesting because, like as I say, I coach cricket, coach rugby.
Yeah,
I love coaching rugby because it's actually it's short and sharp in comparison to cricket, and you're actually able to keep particularly the juniors, you're able to keep them involved, get them moving, get them doing stuff. They're enjoying it, and it has a slightly different edge to it, I suppose, than the cricket side of things.
Yeah, nice. So, in the 5 or 6 years that you have been coaching, have you had any heartbreaks or disappointments?
I was thinking about this, and I haven't really had any real heartbreaks. Look, I work on the principle that you coach your team to play as well as they possibly can go out and compete as hard as they can. The opposition coach does the same thing, and one team's going to win, one team's going to lose, and it's, have you played as hard as you can? Have you competed? Have you worked as hard as you possibly could? So for me, the disappointment as a coach usually comes from, and probably my key measure for juniors is, did the kids come back the year after? And every kid that doesn't come back the year after, that's a disappointment for me. And do I need to change something? Could I have done something differently? That's what I'd say the disappointments are for me, particularly coaching juniors. You want them to keep coming back because they enjoyed it. The game itself, as I say, it's a contest, two teams, one team wins, one team loses. I'm pretty pragmatic about it in terms of, if you lose, then you lose, but you want the kids to have enjoyed it and had a good time.
Yeah, nice. So it's about keeping those kids in the game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, I've had a few kids that I've coached over the years, and when they don't come back, it's that whole, oh shit, was it me? Was it something I said? Was it something I did do or didn't do? Or, you rack yourself with guilt over it. Yeah, absolutely.
But you've got to be honest with yourself too on it. And you can't necessarily change it, but treat it as a learning experience and move on, try and learn from it. What can I do differently? Yeah,
and that's really good, and that'll flow into some of the stuff we'll get cracking into shortly. So I want to flip that on its head, mate. And have you had any, or you probably have had a few, but what's one of your greatest moments as a coach?
You know what, that under 10 team that I coached, and look, I say great's probably taking it a little bit far, but that under 10 team was a great, they're a great bunch of kids, and there were a lot of players in there who hadn't played previously. And in the Sevens tournament at the end of the season, I think it was the Harlequins Sevens tournament, watching them win the first trophy for the club was pretty cool, pretty special. And the photos afterwards, in terms of 10-year-olds holding up a cup and all being together and celebrating it and what have you, that was that's probably, in terms of a coaching moment, the best. But I think it's not too dissimilar to the other answer, though. For me, the best part about coaching and the greatest part is watching players get better, whether it's session on session or season on season, and get to play to their potential, whatever that potential might be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally agree. Especially at that junior level, it's just so important to have that development with them.
Yeah.
So which will bring me around to when we're coaching the kids. How do you? Because I know in Melbourne it can get quite horrible in the winter, and especially the younger kids. There's 100 reasons why they're not going to be at training.
Yep.
But what do you do so that those kids turn up every Tuesday and Thursday or Wednesday, whatever nights it is that you're training, and it's July and it's 3 degrees and the rain's coming in sideways, and they could be anywhere else, and probably their parents don't want to be there anyway. But
no, in my 16 school team, I have turn up for practice at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. So,
nice.
Which is all good. Which for under 16s is pretty impressive for having them get out of bed. But in terms of trying to get them to that, I think it's one, making sure you've got a structure in your plan with regards to your coaching session, so they know that, and then you've got to provide the energy to the session, particularly early on in terms of getting it started. Let them know what you're trying to do and keep it as positive as you possibly can. And then I think with regards to your drills, it's not doing the same drill for too long that they start getting bored. And I think there's something, and I've taken it from cricket over to rugby, or tried to. I always say with cricket, hit more balls, bowl more balls, throw more balls, catch more balls.
Yep.
Have as many balls on the go as you possibly can, so more kids are handling the balls and doing stuff all the time, and reduce the amount of time that they're spending in lines or queues or waiting for stuff to happen. Because as soon as you have that, doesn't matter whether they're under 10s, under 16s, under 18s, probably, and I'd argue seniors as well, they'll start getting bored at some point, and then once you start losing them, it's pretty hard to get them back on track. So you've just got to keep it as fast moving and positive as possible.
Yeah, and I'd definitely put seniors in that group too, mate.
Yeah.
They're probably worse for it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good, mate. So that fast moving.
Yeah, keep it going and keep challenging them, I think, as well.
Yep.
And a bit of competition. And look, I've got a group, they love to play, or the question they always ask, can we play a game now? Can we play a game now? And they're talking about like that full contact game. So tell you what, we do all of this, do it right, get to the end, we can play the game.
So you're giving them the carrot.
Yeah, you got to
do this, and this. We're going to do what you want to do. Yeah, nice. So it's probably a good lead into what are some of the lessons you've learned over and it can be cricket, rugby, combination of both.
Yeah,
because we should all be. Well, my view is we should always be growing as coaches.
Yeah, I think for me the lessons I've learned is, one, create the right environment. So really early on, create the right environment where, I don't know, it doesn't matter if it's kids, if it's boys, if it's girls, and I've coached boys and girls for both sports, that it's a safe environment where they can make mistakes safely. I think that bit's really important, and that comes from I think your communication and setting that environment out early on and getting everybody involved in setting out that environment. Are you all happy? With the juniors, you've maybe got to take more of a directive approach, but then like asking the question, you're all happy with that as a way that we're going to structure this, and this is what the environment is that we want. Then it's about keeping it as positive as you possibly can, and trying to individually connect with the different players, because they're all different and they all have different things that'll work for them or won't, and you've got to try and get to understand that, so I can put them into that situation, or you know what, we're going to have to work on that type of situation at practice before we put them into it in a game, so they feel confident enough to be able to execute what they need to. But a lot of it comes down to that safe, positive environment, and understanding that as a coach, it's not about you, it's about them, the players. They're the ones that go out and play. And you know what, if you want to play, then play as well, rather than doing it through whether it's the kids, or even if you're coaching seniors or adults. And I coach senior cricket, it's the same thing. Let them go out and play. It's not about you.
Yeah, and I think that's something that gets lost on young coaches, especially ones that sort of transition, like this year they're playing and next year they're coaching.
Yeah.
And it's about, well, I'm here now, I've got to win, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And all of a sudden, like you might be an A-grade cricketer or an A-grade rugby player, and then all of a sudden you're coaching under eights.
Yep.
And you don't have an under nines because there's going to be none of them there, because they don't relate to what you're trying to do.
And that's probably the other bit, is take the winning piece out of it. If you get the process right, the winning piece will look after itself. I think you can get quite, and like, I'm as competitive as anyone. Fair to say, I probably suffer a little bit of white line fever. But when you're coaching, it can't be about the winning, because that becomes very binary. You're all of a sudden, for a, I don't know, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, they walk off the field, we lost, and then that's the only thing they're feeling. That they may have played the best game of their lives, but it can't just be about the win-loss. And that's why I'm a big believer, like I said earlier, in you've got to teach people to compete, play as hard as you can, but understand that when you go out to play sport, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. It may be that the other team beats you because they were better on the day. And you know what? If you do lose, don't look for excuses as to why you lost. You've got to front up and say, look, we weren't good enough because of X, Y, and Z, right? How are we gonna get better? And it's trying to put that also into place with a team to say, we want to continuously improve. We want to continuously be getting better. So we need to be accountable, whether we win or lose, for our performance. So how could we get better, whether you've won or lost? And then you keep moving on. And that way that the team will keep getting better as a team and the individuals will get better and grow.
Yeah, you did right on that. Have you had any issues with that around not so much the players, but parents?
I always say with regards to coaching kids, you've got two jobs. Yep. Coach children, manage parents.
Yep.
You'll always have those parents who take it more seriously than others. And I think quite early on, that's a lot of that comes down to the club. And I think if I look at racing, they're really good with regards to, it's not all about winning. We have to remember that this is about the kids, and we're doing this for this reason. And yep. Moorabbin's very much the same. But a lot of it's setting out that at the start of the season. So have the club set it out, and then you set it out at the start of the season and say, look, this is how we're going to play. This is what we're doing. We may not win every game, but our hope is that the kids enjoy it, want to come back, and that they learn and develop. And I don't think that's any different to seniors, to be honest. And I think the other thing you have to remember, I think particularly in Melbourne, having grown up in New Zealand, and I grew up, I started actually playing rugby when I was in Sydney, so when I was 7. But there are places where you've got your team that is at under 7s pretty much stays with you the whole way through. Whereas here, people start later because they've done their Auskick or whatever it might be. They discover rugby a little bit later. So if I look at the school team I coach, that's 13 of the 16 guys, when they started playing at the age of 13, hadn't played rugby before. So you still get that even 18s. I know we've got at least 2 or 3 players who haven't played rugby before. So if you want to sit there and say, we're going to win every game, you've got to, for a start, you've got to have the cattle to do it. But even taking that aside, going back to the point right at the start, you want those kids to come back the year after. So if they sit on the bench because you want to win every game, and they sit on the bench and they play 5 minutes junk time at the end of a game every week, and you might start off with that so they get used to it, and then you increase it to 10, and then it goes to 15. But if it's just about winning and you're doing 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, they're not going to come back. And in Melbourne, more than anywhere, you need them to come back because they're the ones that'll feed into your senior club.
Yeah, and it's not like we've got an abundance of kids running around either.
No.
Down here. That's a really good point around and setting those goals for the kids, and letting them know that, and when I coach some junior teams, I would say to them, I don't care whether we win or not. Winning's great, but if you all walk off the field and legitimately look me in the eye and go, I've given you the best I've got, and if we've won 30-0 and you go, I could have given you 20% more, I'm going to be as pissed off as if we'd have lost that game because you haven't given me, you haven't done yourself as the right thing, But if we get beat 100-0 and 15 players walk off and go, I'm done, I've given you everything I've got. They're a better team. They're a better team than us, mate.
Yeah. There was a game recently I helped out at, and it was an under-18s game, and our guys, they're a team it's a joint team, mixed team, from 3 different clubs. We had 3 guys on the bench, and we were playing against Wyndham, who were a great team, and we lost that game by plenty. But there was one thing that really stood out to me, and I haven't been able to watch them a lot this season. In the 60th minute, the 70th minute, they were still chasing back as hard as they could to try and make tackles on bigger kids. It wasn't about the result. They were just out there competing as hard as they could, playing for their mates and not wanting to let their mates down, regardless of what the score said. And that to me said a lot about, and I said it after the game, that to me said a lot about the kids, that they were still willing to put in regardless of the result. And I always go back to, I think teams define themselves in adversity, and they showed themselves to be the sort of players that you'd want to walk onto a field with.
Yep. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, they just kept going, even though they knew they had nothing.
Yeah,
they weren't going to win. They just kept turning up. And just kept working for their mates. And some of that's the stuff you can't coach either. Yeah,
you can try and coach it and what have you, but they've either got it, or they don't. And a lot of that, though, also it's not so much that technical coaching thing. It's about that's going right back to the start. Have you created that environment where they're all in it? They're all in it together. It's not about individuals. It's not about superstars. It's about, are you all in this together? Are you willing to go out there, look your mate in the eye and say, I've got you?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good takeaway for any young coaches out there that are listening, is having that mindset in your team that, like you said, if the development's there and the enjoyment's there, the results will come.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter what the sport is as well. You have to remember that every kid, the kids all develop physically, mentally, and emotionally differently. Like I look at say my boy, but I'll use me. When I left school, I was 6 foot and 58 kilos. I was tiny beanpole. I can safely say I'm not 58 kilos anymore in any way, shape, or form. Probably double that at least. And I grew a lot from 16 to 18. I think I grew 14 inches. I was a very different kid at 16 to 18. Forget about emotionally and mentally. I was very different physically. And that's the same with the other kids. And that's why you've got to keep them in. Part of it is keep them in the game, because you don't know what they'll become or how they'll grow and how they'll develop physically later.
Yeah. So that the under 12 kid that's been playing at 9 because he's the smallest kid in the team, he turns up for under 13s or 14s the next year, and he's going to be your hooker because he's just he's just hit that growth spurt, or or your hooker has hit the growth spurt, and he's now running 100 meters in 11 seconds, so he's now playing in the outside backs. Absolutely.
And those little kids also often have to develop their skills and all the rest of it in a different way to the bigger kid, and they have to learn to compete that little bit harder. It's not necessarily the bigger kid, but that kid who's always been that little bit ahead, who then everyone catches up to that kid, and then it's about trying to keep that kid where he wants to be, but tell the others that you can get there. Like, don't give up now. It's still ahead of you.
Yeah. So how do you go with, especially in probably that 12 to 16-year-old bracket, because that's when everything starts changing for them. How do you go at a training session when you've got that kid that he's aspirational, he's a decent footy player, and he's probably he could potentially make a rep team or further, and then you've got his mate or whoever turns up, can't catch a cold in the middle of winter. He's never going to be a first grade player, but he loves the game. He wants to play with his mates. How do you balance that and develop?
A little bit of that comes down to having a coaching team. So being able to get the players who are maybe still developing, say the new players, we're going to get you, you're going to go and do some separate work with regards to the tackling, the contact, and what have you, so you can get them involved. And the other thing is with the more developed player is part of your job as in a team, you'll always have players in a team who are a little bit above. Doesn't matter what level you play. Play international rugby, there's guys who are above the other ones in terms of that. But part of your job as a player, if you're one of the better players, is to make the players around you better. Because to me, the best teams probably the most important players in the best teams are probably your bottom 10, if you like, for want of a better word than bottom. But those 10, how well they play will have a big impact on how you do as a team. And it's about the better players helping to develop those people, which goes again back to the point with regards to set the right environment. We're a team. We're only terrible cliche, but we're only as strong as our weakest link. So part of your job is to help develop these players. And do you know what? If those 10 players, because you're berating them because they keep dropping the ball, don't turn up next week, guess what? You don't get to play. You got 10 players. You can't play with 10.
No, that's a good point to sort of make the other players aware of that. You know, we're not where he may not be the best rugby player, but you know he's going to be good at something, and he's not going to, you know, and that might take him 10 years to work out what he's good at. But you know what, he's here, and without him, we might not have a team.
And you know what? That's also one of the great things about rugby compared to other sports. There is a position for every shape, size, talent. You can get them to do what, do you know what? You could be the guy who's great as a tight head prop. You don't have to be able to throw a double skip pass or whatever. You have to do those particular jobs, and you have to do those jobs really well. And that's your definition of success on the field, is you doing that. It's quite different to what I want my 10 to do and what the 10 needs to do. And do you know what? The 10 can't do what the 10 needs to do
if you don't do
unless you're not doing doing your job.
Yeah. There. Oh, absolutely.
And the 10 needs to understand that as well. You don't get to do all the fun, pretty stuff if the tight head prop's not doing what the tight head prop's doing. You rely on him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like, even when I was playing, like, someone said to me, "How'd you go on the weekend?" And I'll go, "Oh, we won 2 scrums against the feed." What was the score? I don't know. I won 2 scrums against the feed. Or, you know, we got 3 maul tries or something. What was the score?
Yeah.
I don't know. Not my job. I just, you know, and get that mindset into the kids. Like you said, like the 10 doesn't get his space if the 8 blokes in front of him don't go forward. Or, if, you know, if they lose every scrum because this guy doesn't do his job. Well, and just getting that mindset into the players that, you know, everyone's going to be good at their own thing and making it work. Pardon me. So I want to have a chat about, I've written it down as coach education versus coach development. So what I mean by that is, we've all done the courses, whether it's Smart Rugby or level 3 courses or whatever it is, you pay your money and you go in there for X amount of time, you get your piece of paper and see you later, off you go. That's coach education. And then on the other side of it is that coach development. Like, once you leave that course, what do you do? So what are some of the things you either do or you've looked at or your club does really well around the development of coaches? Because my view is we're there to develop players. But who's developing us to develop the player? You know what I mean? Like, if I coach under 7s, I can't go, I'm going to go and do my level 2 course, and next year I'm going to coach the first grade men's team, because So what are your thoughts around that type of stuff, or what have you done or found difficult?
Yeah, I think for me, the development piece is always really important, and a lot of that falls on you as an individual as well. So are you curious? Do you look outside of your courses, like you say, your level 2, level 3, whatever, smart rugby, whatever it might be, and look for other stuff? I find a lot of it's talking to other coaches. What do you use? How do you use this? So one that I've started sort of trying to use and showing to the players is, say, I think it's the contact coach on Facebook. I found that to be quite handy with the juniors, because it's really basic instruction. And look, I have a full-time job, so I don't really have enough time to do all the analysis and watch the videos and all the rest of it that I'd quite like to. So you just try and find some sort of points around that. And I find just listening to different ways that different people look at a game really helpful. And then also I like to read, whether it's like self-development books or whatever it might be. And some of those I find have stuff that you can put in. And then I'll look at other sports as well and read stuff from different coaches. The thing that I find probably hardest and what I'd like to be able to do more of is and part of that's me as much as anything, and finding the time to do it, is go and spend time watching other coaches' sessions. And I've done it as a group of sort of 10, 15 and watched a masterclass, but I'd quite like to shadow someone for, whether it's a session, whether it's for a game week, whatever it might be, just to sort of get that sort of input. Okay, that's how they do it. Could you do it differently? How would I do it? What would I do in those different situations and at different levels? Because eventually, would I like to coach seniors? Yeah, I would, but it's quite different in terms of how you go about that. And then I think the other thing is also, as you go up through the ranks, working out if you're a head coach or you are an assistant coach. And that doesn't mean you might be an assistant coach who could be a head coach, but it might be as well that you're that person who, you know what, I'll be a better assistant coach than I will be a head coach. Yeah. You've got to get around your ego a little bit, I think, with regards to that. But that's what I think I'd be good at. And then, okay, if that's what I think I'd be good at, how do I go about developing within that sphere?
And I think you look at the guys like Laurie Fisher, prime example. He could be a head coach at any franchise.
Yeah.
And he's quite happy to happy to be the assistant coach and be really good at the stuff that he does.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not saying that he wouldn't be a good head coach, but like you said, he's made that decision as to what he wants to do.
Well, even if you look at the guys like whether it's Michael Checker or Graham Henry, after they've finished coaching and they go and, you know what, I'm quite happy to go and be an assistant coach to Ledesma at Argentina, or I'm quite happy. I think in 2004, Graham Henry was the technical analyst for the Blues when they won the Super Rugby tournament. He just watched videos, analysed, and gave the notes to the coach. Yeah. So they're still involved, and they just want to take that seat back. Yeah. And that's a good point to think of, because like not everyone's cut out to be a head coach, but there's some ripping guys out there that are assistant coaches. Yeah. And they're happy to do it, and they're good at it, and you know they'd never ever want to be a head coach because they actually look at it and they go, "Nah, too much work. I don't have the time." You know, and there's a whole thing of stuff why people don't want to do it, and that's okay. And I think that's probably one of the things that is missing is and I put it like my job. I work in recruitment, so a lot of it's around career paths and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Is, okay, what career paths are available to a budding coach? What do they actually look like? What are the different ones that are there in terms of, and it's not, and I think generally people think I've got to go coach juniors, probably coach under 18s, then I might coach Colts, then I might coach first grade, then where do I go from there? But what are the different options that sit outside of that? Whether it's assistant coach, forwards coach, scrum coach, mindset coach, individual coaching consultant who's quite good at doing stuff one-on-one with players in terms of from a mental skills point of view rather than a really technical piece. There's lots of different pieces that are in there or the data analytics that's available now. What are the different things that are available? Because I think a lot of it's hidden, and I would also say a lot of it no different to career paths is around who you know.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
How do you get there and all the rest of it? And does that and that's no different to playing and talent identification. How good are you at finding the right person to work with you in the right role so you become a better coaching team rather than, I'm the head coach, you do what I say. How can you be able to create those career paths so you get stronger coaching teams, which then means you'll have stronger playing groups?
Yeah, and you look at a lot of the coaches that have coached at that high level, when they move on, they often just take the whole team with them. Like they all go together or they all just leave because they've had that close-knit relationship as a unit. And when Michael Checker left, all the other coaches went, "Oh, we're done," and just left. And they're just like, not that they didn't want to be part of what was happening. They just went, this little group that we've got is not going to function now without this person or that person. So they went their own way. And
which is sort of sad because you potentially lose a lot of the IP.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're rebuilding that from scratch. And then it goes back to, okay, how could the organisation now, whether that's Rugby Australia, whether that's New Zealand, Rugby New Zealand, or whoever it might be, how could we do that better to make sure that we've got career paths set out and, okay, what happens if this happens?
Yeah.
What happens if this happens? Because sometimes as an organisation, you're not the one that's in control of the person leaving. So that person leaves and then you lose all their assistants with them. Now, all of a sudden you're you're going to have to help out here, and you haven't got a plan for different scenarios that keep as many people around you as you possibly can.
Yeah, and you often find that if, like you said, that coaching group goes and they throw someone in there, or you're the second grade coach, mate, up you go, and he's going, I'm the second grade coach for a reason, mate. And then he gets hammered because he's not up to speed.
Yeah.
It's
and he didn't want the job. He didn't want the
doesn't want it anyway.
Didn't want the job. They didn't want the job. And that's always going to come through in your results. If the person doesn't want the job to coach them, the players will pick up on that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Or even do the players respect him as a coach? You've seen it plenty of times. They bring a coach in and everyone loves him, and the players just go, nah, for whatever reason. But just going back to that point you made about talking to other coaches and stuff like that. And I think that's where, as young coaches, a lot of people get possibly intimidated to make that phone call or to send that email to somebody and just go, you know what, do you mind if I come and, sit on the sideline and watch us train for a couple of nights just to get some ideas around what you do? Because, they're not going to give you their IP, which that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But you might get something about how they coach or how they, I've been trying to get that drill to work for 6 months and I've just seen you've tweaked it and that's going to work.
Yeah.
And then you walk away from there and you go, that was worth it. And all the guys I've spoken to around that are all happy to go, yeah, mate, come along, no worries. Obviously, you don't interrupt what they're doing and all that type of stuff. But the ones that haven't, it's all been for a legit reason. Like they might go, oh, look, we've got this on this night, so it's a bit different, or, you know, we've got a semi-final, so it's going to be a bit different than this. You know, and you just go, okay, cool, I get that. And I think that's where a lot of coaches just think they're trying to reinvent the wheel. No one's brought anything new out in rugby for 30 years. Let's be honest. Maybe just the way we coach it, but there's nothing new.
No, I think if you went back to lessons, that'd be the other one. Keep it simple. It's actually not. The game's not that complicated. Keep moving the ball forward and into space.
Yeah, I remember John Mitchell when I was in WA. He just signed with the Force. He did like a seminar with everyone, and he went, "Rugby's a simple game. Run where they're not." And I went, "Okay." And he goes, "That's it." And we went, "Okay." And then he sort of broke, but he goes, "That's how simple it is. You run where they're not. Run through windows, not through doors." And we went, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're right." And we overcomplicate it, especially at that junior level. We try and run, you know, double wraps and free cutouts and this and that, and the kids just go, "Just give me the ball. I just want to run."
Just put it through the hands.
Put it through the
hands.
Move
on to it.
The old German move, hands. But yeah, so that's a good tip there, mate. Is just to talk to people, talk to other coaches. Don't be afraid to ask a question. Especially most guys will give you something. So that's good, mate. So we've got that covered off. Awesome. So what advice would you give yourself when you first started coaching, knowing what you know now?
I think keep it simple. And be willing to ask questions, and both ways. So ask questions of other people who are around, who you respect, and you respect their opinions, whether it's, I don't know, your director of coaching or what have you, and be willing to look for, if you're not an expert with regards to teaching scrummaging, for example, go and find someone who is. Try and, if you can find someone to come in and help you, then find someone to come in and help you, because also a different voice quite often helps. And ask questions. So ask questions of people around, but also ask questions of the players. So they're taking on board that, because they'll take on board more learning if you're asking them questions rather than telling them.
So how do you question your players? There's heaps of methods.
There's heaps of methods. Like you've got your grow method and all sorts of different ones. I think a lot of it is, and it depends a little bit situational. How could you have done that differently? Or what about this? Probably try and avoid why. Is one question. I try to avoid it. It's a question I struggle to avoid because I have to ask it a lot in my job. So it's a hard thing to sort of switch out, but keep the questions open and then try and drill it down a little bit and then give them a chance to try and do it differently. Or what if you'd done this? What do you think might have happened if you'd done this?
Nice. I know, and I still struggle with it now, is the silence. Like you'll ask a question and you know the answer you want them to say to you, and if they haven't got it within 3 or 4 seconds, you just go, "I want you to do this," and they'll go, "Do you understand?" "Yep," and off they go, and they've got no idea what you're talking about. Again, I think that's
silence is, because if you leave silence, someone will always fill it. They have to fill it, and it may not be 100% right, and then you can sort of try and work them towards the answer that you want. And do you know what the other thing is? If you give them the answer, sometimes their answer will be better than yours because they haven't been as programmed as you have, particularly the young kids.
Yeah.
They come up. Actually, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like it.
And they'll say something, you'll go, yeah, you're actually right. And that happened to me one night at senior training.
Yep.
I asked a question, and the guy, I can't remember what it was now, but it was something, and I just went, yes, you're right, but how do we get there?
Yeah.
And then we did all that. So yeah, and being prepared for that left field answer as well.
Yeah.
Especially with kids, because they'll go this and that, and
some of the things that come out of their mouths are priceless.
I know, right? I know.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we struggle with as coaches, and like young coaches and coaches just starting out, is around that questioning.
Yeah.
And talking too much.
Yes, I'm good at that. Definitely.
Oh, yeah. So I started. I don't do it as much now as I used to, but I always, like pre-season, I'll wear a GoPro.
Yeah.
And I don't even look at the footage. I just listen, and it's just like, oh yeah, that was horrible. Why did I say it? Why did I say that there? And so if you can get that opportunity, or get someone to video you.
Yeah, I watched a video from me.
It
was a while ago. It was probably at the start of the season, and I watched it back. So maybe I'm and my voice carries, particularly on a suburban ground. Maybe I don't need to say quite so much. Maybe I just let them play rather than.
Yeah, and that's a good little trick for coaches, is sometimes the less you say, the more they actually achieve.
Yeah.
Let them think about it.
Yeah.
No, some really good. Excellent. Awesome, mate. That was really good. Yeah. No, I think people get some good ideas out of that. And
fingers crossed.
Mate, for me, if one person listens to it and gets one piece of information out of it, that's happy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We're not taking over the world, but if we can help one coach solve one problem they've got, well, and it keeps one kid in the game.
Yeah. And that for me is, how do you drive? You want to continue to drive numbers, and that means you've got to have a good player experience. And it's one of the things we've done at the cricket club. So I'm president of the cricket club as well. And I started up a girls program. It was a girls program 4 or 5 years ago, and just concentrate on the player experience, and they'll keep recommending people if every individual has a good time, and you've set up that safe environment that's inclusive, everyone gets to go, they've got that participation piece. It'll look after itself in terms of your playing numbers, which goes back to that bit. Don't make it about winning, make it about the playing experience and the players getting better and learning different skills. And that's how you grow your numbers. And that's what we need to do in rugby to a degree in Melbourne, is to get that critical mass, so you can look at different options, whether it's how you do your weight for age might be an example. Like weight for age is a great concept. I grew up with it in New Zealand.
Yeah.
You know what? If you've only got 17 kids and you're under 15s, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have enough numbers, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, because they tried that was it this season here or last season?
Yeah, they've sort of got something in there with weight ranges and what have you. And look, I see the benefit of it. I've also got a kid who played, my eldest played under 16s he was 46 kilos. But he's reasonably fearless. He's quite happy to go in and make a tackle regardless of who's running at him. But at the same time, I also see, having coached kids, that it doesn't work for some others. But without having the critical mass, it doesn't work, because you might lose players there. But if you go the other way, then potentially you lose other players because they don't get to play with their mates anymore because they're in different teams. And really, what do kids want to do? Kids want to play with their mates.
Yeah. I knew they were trialling it or something, but I hadn't seen any information on it out of Rugby Vic as to how it was going. So, yeah, and I can see both sides of it, mate.
Yeah, same.
It's like most things in anything to do with rugby now. There's two sides to every situation.
As I say, I played rugby in Sydney first, so from the age of 7 till 11, I lived in Sydney. So I started playing rugby there, and that didn't have weight for age. And then I went to New Zealand at the age of 11, and it did have weight for age.
Yeah.
And looking back, neither. I don't actually even. I can't even think of what the differences were overly, aside from the fact we had one guy I know at under 8s and under 9s who you tapped the ball and gave it to him, and he ran about 50 metres down the field with 6 kids hanging off him, and then that created space somewhere else.
Yeah. And that was about all it was good for.
Yeah.
But that kid couldn't catch or pass, so you just give him the ball and he runs.
He just,
Yeah.
And he couldn't get to every breakdown either.
No. And we see it all the time in the rep programs. You get kids turning up and they go, I play this position. Mate, you reckon? Yeah. I know why you play there, because your coach wants you to do something, but you want to play there, but you can't catch pass or you can't do this. But I know why they've got you there, because they want to win. They're not looking at developing you as a player. But
that also goes back to that point, and I've got it in a couple of my teams, is that team that has a lot of players who haven't played before.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple of guys who have played, and one of them I play at centre. Look, do you know what? He probably should be at 8, but I know he'd want to pick the ball up off the back of the scrum all the time and what have you. And the reason I play him at 13 is so the other kids get to develop, get their hands on the ball, get to make decisions, because that's what's going to make them better. And in 3 or 4 years' time, he needs them to be better players if he wants to achieve what he wants to achieve.
Yeah. You can see that side of it. Then you also see the other side where they just, they put this kid at 10.
Yeah.
And so these guys out here, they're not even getting the ball.
Yeah.
And it does my head in.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is what it is. Unfortunately, some coaches still coach to win it under 8s. So, you're
not going to change that either.
You're not.
And you know what? Also, the other thing is they volunteer. So sometimes, and I've found that with regards to running a cricket club, they're willing to do it. So you've got to try and work with it, and you try and make it work for you. And that's part of the thing as well, is about getting the right, if you're running a sports club, getting the right volunteers for the right roles and being able to pick them out and try and, I need you to coach this team.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, mate, I've been in that position where, the next person puts his hand up is getting a coaching job, because I'm not coaching 4 teams this year, but and they're usually the ones, some of them are really good, but they're the ones you have the issues with. And you do look at them and go, you're a volunteer, mate, and I appreciate it, but you're probably doing more harm than good.
Yeah. And then it's those difficult conversations that are always painful to have.
Yes, exactly. So,
have I still got it? Yeah.
I've still got you, mate.
Yep, I'm back on.
You're back on?
Back on, yep. Yeah. Don't know what happened then.
Yeah, no, they can be difficult conversations. So, all right. No, well, thanks so much for your time, mate.
Quite all right. Thank you.
I know you're a busy man, and I'll hit the stop button on the record.